Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today it is time to have a look at the authentic decals, which are available for the first 2 weeks of October. They actually started on the 1st, but we're covering them now because, well, I've been kind of busy. So when it comes to these are available until the 18th of October, and there are, of course, 5 of them as usual. Now, the bi-weekly decals are decals that are available to you just for a short period of time, generally for challenges, and the idea is that you get a small period of time to be able to do them, and if you're able to do them, then you keep the decals. Most of them are generally kind of simple. These ones are kind of easy, and also with the Operation Shipyard events happening at the same time, it pretty much means that, well, you can grind these out while doing the Operation Shipyard event. Remember, the Operation Shipyard event is one of those events where it's more time-based than skill-based. Even though it does help to get some first places, it isn't necessary if you want, 2 of the vehicles out of the 4. So what is happening here is you can work on these different challenges while doing those time-based stuff for Operation Shipyard and kind of double dip along with your daily tasks, your special tasks for the Warbond shop, and any camouflage or anything like that you want to work on. There is something else I do need to talk about though, which I have forgotten about, so let's have a look right here. We do have a new design on the shirt store, of course on the Teespring store, and it is a lovely new design. As you can see, we already have a bunch of them going on, but we have the Guy Giller design, and also there is a discount for 10% off any purchase on the Tech Hub, and I'll make sure in a pinned comment on this video there will be it. So this is the general design. You can get a sticker for it. You can see it's a good lad riding a snail with, of course, armed with a wonderful Soviet gun. You can get this on t-shirts. You can get this as even a poster if you feel like it, or a sticker I should say, or a die cut sticker, or even on a mug. This to me is one of the simpler designs that we've done, but also is a great design for what it is. For me personally, I do like the idea of just a dude riding a snail into battle. I think it's definitely one of those interesting ideas. So yeah, check it out on the Tech Hub or on the Teespring website. I'll make sure to leave a link, as I said, as a pinned comment, so you can get yourself a 10% discount on anything you order on Teespring for at least the foreseeable future, maybe the next week or so. And if you have any other questions, make sure to talk to Nathan Clawfish, who is on the Tech Hub Discord, one of the moderators over there, who does a wonderful job at managing all of the products. So let's get into the decals themselves. The first one is the Wasp emblem of the JGSDF, and in order to get this, you have to play 10 battles and achieve a score of at least 2,000 while driving Japanese ground vehicles, or purchase for 200 GE. So you can purchase that one. That's probably the hardest out of the bunch, but it'll just take a little bit of time. It's not too hard as long as you use the right methods. The next one is the Comanche emblem of Sea Troop 11 Cav US 1st AD, and this is 200 GE, so you can't grind this one out. It is a really lovely decal. It kind of sucks that they always put the really nice ones behind, the paywall, but it is only 200 GE. You're not really breaking the bank for it, therefore if you want it, make sure to pick it up. The next one is the emblem of the 4th Guard Kantemirovskaya tank division. I'm sure I've completely butchered that, and I apologize. Then you have to, for this one, destroy 100 or 50 for RB and SB enemy player vehicles while driving Soviet ground vehicles. So you can destroy air vehicles as long as you're in ground vehicles here, which is a nice addition. You don't have to just destroy ground vehicles, you just have to be in ground vehicles. The emblem of the 11th Fighter Squadron, RAF, and you have to play 5 battles and finish in 1st place while flying British aircraft, or purchase for 200 GE. And the last one is the emblem of the 8th Hikotai JASDF, and once again it's destroyed 40 or 20 for RB enemy player vehicles whilst flying Japanese aircraft. And also remember, if you did the bi-weekly decal decals, last week, they will have been moved to their respective sections. So make sure that you don't lose them, because otherwise it'll be kind of annoying. So looking at them in game, because of the lateness of this video, I've actually ground them all out already. And this is basically because doing the Operation Shipyard event, you generally grind these out kind of easily. So the first one, the emblem of the 11th Fighter Squadron, this took me around about 7 to 8 battles because I was doing it in the most efficient way. And then when it came to the other decals, I just obviously bought the Comanche one since you can't, you can't grind it out. The Wasp one, the Wasp emblem, and the Japanese one where you need to get 10 missions played and 2,000 mission score, I did at the same time as this one where you need to get 40 players defeated when it comes to the air vehicles of Japan. And the last one, the emblem of the 4th Guards, I did on the same day as the other two. So technically, even though these are decals which last for 18 days, I was able to get these done in about a day and a half. So they're not too hard to do. They're actually kind of simple this time. There's none which really stand out as a really hard challenge. It's more just, kind of a little bit grindy. But on top of the Operation Shipyard event, that should be okay for the majority of you. So let's talk about the actual ones themselves. And remember, if you want to put them on your hotbar, what you do is you go to decals, you go to week's latest, and they should be the top offerings, which you can see here. So let's just pop them in, just so we can have access to them. They go over here in your favorite achievements, which is this button right here on this side, after the selected vehicle and the crew skill, and then of course this. So the first one we're going to talk about is the Wasp emblem, and we're going to talk about it in conjunction with the 8 Hikotai JASDF because of the fact that these two you can do in tandem. The Japanese, in general, have some very powerful lineups when it comes to their ground forces, and since you have to get a mission score of 2,000, with the change to aircraft, I'm sure a lot of people, when they change their aircraft so they don't get as much mission score over time when it comes to ground battles, and I feel like a lot of people are going to be pushed towards the idea of using more ground vehicles, and that's completely fine if you want to. For me personally, I've been running my 3-3 lineup and kind of doing the opposite, and the reason why is because of the Chaffee, and also because I wanted to get this one done at the same time. So to get mission score of 2,000, you generally have to get maybe around 5 kills, a few caps if you want to do it in ground forces, maybe take a few shots, and this lineup here with the Chaffee at 3.3, the Chinu, the NATO, and also the Zero, the Key 49 2A is kind of just here as some decorator, and yes, I'm running a wonderful Swedish skin on the A6M2, so your main vehicles are basically the M24, the Chinu, and the A6M2. The other battle lineups you can do is 7-0, if you're running the Type 75. If not, you can run the Type 61, which is a pretty decent heat slinger. It's got an incredible breach on it as well, which seems to just soak up pretty much everything for no apparent reason. And then, of course, you have the Monster, which is the Ho-Ri production. You can also bring along the Kicker, which will be able to get the 40 players defeated, which, remember, is only 20 players defeated in aircraft. But the 3.3 lineup is the way to go, in my opinion, because this is basically how you play it. So you got the M24, you spawn in the M24 first. At 3.3, the 75mm, after the changes to the DeMar formula with the M61 shell, it gets over 100mm of penetration. The M61 shot can easily go through the majority of people you're going to face. Playing as Japan, you're going to face a lot of America, you're going to face a lot of Germany, and that shell goes through every Panzer IV, goes through every Sherman, goes through everything like that. So you'll only struggle against some Shermans, and you'll have to shoot in the top of it. I'll show you right now where you'll have to shoot them. So let's just go to the M4A one. No, that's not the one. The M4 is the one which is a tough cookie. Basically, the place that you shoot the M4 is right here. At the top, you go through the top, and then it pens, then it fires down and kills the turret, and then you can just go forward. Alternatively, you can shoot in areas like this, but it is a little bit more dodgy, especially if the angle's a bit crude, so that is something to worry about. Anyway, so this gun is good enough to do pretty much everything. It also has the speed, the M24, to be able to cap a point before anybody gets close to you. You also have scouting available for this vehicle. It pretty much has everything, even a stabilizer on top of everything. The only problem it has is its survivability isn't the best, but you know that isn't too much of a concern when you're playing incredibly hyper aggressive, which is what we want to do in this scenario, because we want to be able to get the points on the board. We want to be able to get that 2000. So the general game plan is M24, get a cap, get on the cap, scout as many people as possible. If anybody gets near you, because of course at 3.3 you're going to have a lot of stuff like Pumas, STKF3, STKFCs, 2342s and stuff like that going to be running at you. Make sure to use the 75 and the 50 cal to your advantage, annihilate them while scouting and doing all of these things. And once you die, because the majority of the time you will die in the Chaffee, but hopefully you will have got a few kills, got a cap, got some scouts, stuff like that. Because of the airstrike modification on the Chaffee, it's minus 14% SP for all aircraft when a scouted target is destroyed by an ally. The default value is also 7%. So with that, it means that it is easier to get in the zero. And then as a zero, what you do is you dominate the sky. You use yourself as a pseudo aggressor when it comes to it. You can even count this spawn if you feel like it. Yes, it's a bit dishonorable, but at the same time, you're trying to get a job done. You're trying to get the 20 kills. And make sure, once you get the 2000, that you either J out of your zero or just, die in some way so you can get back into a vehicle. And let's say it hasn't gone so well in your zero, you haven't been able to achieve air superiority, you've run into something like an A20, which has battered you to death because of its back gunners, then you can always bring the bombs to do a little bit extra. And also, you can finish off the 2000 with the Chi Nu. The Chi Nu in general is a very fun vehicle. It's generally great to play, and overall I think it's a good backup and especially a good finisher when it comes to this lineup. So by this point, you'll be near the end of the battle, and the Chi Nu has a little bit of power behind it. It's got a great gun, so you'll be able to finish some people off. I was able at one point, the enemy were camping the spawn and the battle was lost, and I was at about 1800 points. The Chi Nu, by the time I'd spawned in and also had the invincibility frames, I had 4 kills in it before they were able to kill me, which secured the 2000, which was great. And that's because of the power of this gun. Once it pens, it does a ton of damage, and also it pens up to 100. So that's basically how you get, the 2000s. Spawn in the Chaffee, get a cap, get some scouting, get as many kills as you can. You will eventually die. Once you die, get in the zero, so you can use the zero in order to get this, the emblem of the 8th Hikotai JASDF. Get the 20 kills while you're in the air, in ground forces, since this can be used as an air superiority fighter. When you get 2000, swap back to a tank, get the Wasp thing, and remember, you do need to win 10 missions, so this is something that's going to take a bit of time. It's quite a lot of missions overall. It's probably going to take you maybe 20 to 25, maybe 30 matches, but once you get the hang of it with the Chaffee and the Zero in tandem, you should be completely fine. Other lineups, as I said, 7-0 is very strong. If you don't want to do 7-0, you can go 4-3 with the Cheeto and also the Chi Nu 2 if you have it. If not, I would say the 6-3 one is okay, but unless you've got the Heat FS on the STA1, if you're incredibly comfortable in something like the STB1, please go for the STB1. I'm personally not as comfortable, and if you want a pretty good lineup, which is harder to use than the 3-3, you go 2-3. Like, let's say in 3-3 you end up going against the Soviets a lot, and you keep coming up against lineups which, where have I actually put it? Oh dear. Let's actually find it. Let's say you start coming up against lineups like this monstrosity, which is, one which I run every so often, the KV-1E, the T-34E, and you're sick of getting battered at 3-3, dropping to 2-3 and taking out stuff like the Chi-He and also the Honi 3 alongside something like the A6M2N is not, is not something that should be looked down upon, because you can also bring the Ki 43 or the Ki 44-1, which is an incredibly good vehicle for 2-3, and also air dominance when it comes to ground realistic. So yeah, just take mainly the 3-3 lineup, and if you want to take others, you know, the 2-3 and the 7-0 and the 7-7 would be what I would personally go for. The next one is the emblem of the 4th Guards Tank Division. That is, of course, players defeated 100, so that's 50 players defeated in ground vehicles for USSR. So this one's simple. You just basically have to turn up and shoot things. If you want to do it in the most efficient way, make sure to take this lineup if you have it: KV-1E, T-34E, Su-85A. Su-85A, if you get uptied into jumbos, rat-a-tat with the 85, do a lot of damage with it. If you're at your BR, make sure to take the KV-1E, and then once you die in it, take the T-34 to wrap up everything. This might be one of the most overpowered lineups in the game. Just pound for pound, you know, the amount of power that is here, and rounded off by a wonderful Yak-9T. Even though that doesn't count towards the ground vehicles, sometimes it's just nice to rat-a-tat with it. So if you don't have all these vehicles, which I would be surprised if you do have all these vehicles, there are other lineups which are also incredibly good. So stuff like 5-7, not the 5-7 gold one. God damn it. God damn it! Like, how do I have this? I mean, the 5-7 gold one is there to, you know, have fun with. Something like this, like the 5-3 lineup, is incredibly strong too. T-3485 D5T, the IS-1, and of course the PT-76 with its recent addition of night vision. You've also got the 5-7 lineup, you know, T-3485, IS-2, and your selection of really bad tank destroyer, which you'll never take. You also have the 7-0 lineup with the T-44-100 as the crowning jewel, or you can go balls to the wall and go T-54s, IS-4M, and something like a MiG-9 just to have a bit of fun. So for me, since this is just players defeated, you can play anything from rank 2 and above, and you know, you'll get it done eventually. But if you want the most efficient way, the most efficient way is 4-0, and if you don't have premiums, 5-3 and 5-7 are incredibly strong BRs for the Soviets, and 7-7 as well. If you want to go higher than that, I would say A3 with the T-62, and also the BMP-2 in tow is an incredibly fun lineup as well to get yourself the 100 kills. But yeah, this isn't one that you're going to have to focus on like the Wasp emblem, which, you know, you are going to have to focus on this to get the 2000s, you know, whether you're getting shot or not, or whether you're doing damage. For the Soviet one, it's literally just turn up and shoot things, and eventually you'll get it, and you have a long period of time to be able to get it. Technically, if you started this on the 1st, that's what? That's 18 days or 17 days. So we're talking about, what, like 4.5, something like that, 4.5 kills a day. Like, you can do that. And that's if it was 100. It's 50, actually. So you're talking about 2. Oh, hell. That's maths. It's about 3 a day, 2.5 a day, something like that. So you can easily do that. You know, that's really easy to do with these Soviet vehicles. The last one, which is kind of an interesting one, the emblem of the 11 Fighter Squadron, having to get first in 5 battles in air vehicles from rank 2 to 7 for Britain. Now, this really depends on if you're a fighter aficionado or not, and whether you get matched up with Americans a lot or not. So the easiest way to get place number 1 on a team is low-tier attackers. That's always the way to go. If you yourself are struggling in the fighter role. And I would definitely say a machine like the Boston is the way to go. That's how I did my firsts. Basically, what I was doing while I was grinding out the Chinese tech tree is I was playing a lot of the Type 63, which is, let's just say, a less than stellar vehicle. And if I got crew locked because I just died too quickly when it came to the battle and I didn't want to respawn, then what I would do is I would switch over to my British. I would play the Boston in Air Realistic and just go and ground pound in it. And at 2.3, as long as you pick the correct places, such as the area of the map which is furthest away from where the enemy is going to be, then you can easily rack up the points. And once you rack up the points by killing stuff like AA, artillery, and certain pillboxes with the 500 pounders, then you should easily get first place. And that's basically how I did it. So I did that with the Boston. If you want a non-premium version of that, The bow fighters are incredibly good for ground pounding, a lot of ammunition for those 20mm, including the bow fighter Mark 10, which of course has the 7.7s as well. You've just got to make sure with these vehicles that the higher BR you go, so if you end up in something like a bow fighter Mark 21, you know you're going to get a lot of G2 Trops following you. Just from once they figure out your ground pounding, they're going to come after you, and they're going to come after you hard. So you've got to understand that that's going to happen, right? Another thing is, if you're looking to get first places in a fighter jockey style of way, I would definitely say the Hurricanes are the way to go. The Mark 2B Trop, the Sea Hurricane Mark 1B, incredibly good fighters, and with the up tier of specific vehicles such as the HE100, they have become a lot more fun to play. You can see the HE100 is 2.0 instead of 1.7 right now, so you have more chance of not seeing it on the enemy team. On top of this as well, you have a ton of ammunition, you can stay in the air for a long time, you annihilate biplanes, you can boom and zoom biplanes all day. If you come up against monoplanes, you can normally outturn them, and if not, you can outdive them. The good thing about the Hurricane in this game is it has an advantage against pretty much anything that it faces, apart from the HE100. And the HE100, the advantage that the HE100 has is the fact that it lacks firepower, so the Hurricane at least has more firepower than it. But yeah, my stats kind of speak for itself when it comes to the Hurricane. It's an incredibly well-balanced vehicle. You can see here 70 air kills, 15 deaths, and then if we have a look at the Sea Hurricane, 50 air kills, 14 deaths, Mark 2B Trop, 46 kills, 9 deaths. These are just incredibly fun, really easy vehicles to play. On top of this as well, there are many other vehicles as well which are fun. The early tier Spitfires, like the Spitfire Mark 2B and Mark 2A. The problem is ammunition can run out very quickly on these vehicles, so you've got to be careful. And if you're going the fighter route, you're going to need around at least 3 kills to be able to get top of the team when it comes to the general missions. If you go in the attacker route and killing ground targets, you're going to need around 4,000 points to guarantee yourself being top of the team. So something like a bow fighter definitely can do that. If you want to go a little bit higher tier, basically the higher the tier you go, the harder it's going to be for you to be able to complete these style of challenges. It's kind of as simple as that. So it's much better to stay lower tiers, rank 2 and 3, but if you want to go higher, the Griffin Spits are not a terrible shout. If you want to play that, fighter on fighter role, I will always have a wonderful place in my heart, the Tempest, especially the one with the 3rd Squadron RAF, so that is definitely something you can use to be able to, take on all of those German fighters you're going to fight. But if you just want an easy thing, just get yourself into, some of these lower tier stuff and just have some fun. Even if you want to get in the Hurricane and ground pound, just do that for a bit and you'll be able to get your first places. It's going to take a little bit of time, especially if you're not used to, these planes, but, over time you will get used to it. You've got 14 days to get used to them. Something that Matrix talks about quite a lot, Matrix232, who is an avid arcade player who also does all of these weekly decals. He also does the Warbond Shop stuff, and is also an admin over on the Tech Hub. He goes on about how the boomerangs are labeled as Australian, so therefore they don't actually count for these. They don't actually count for these challenges because it says Britain here. So because these are, labeled as Australian, make sure to not take them for these challenges because they won't work. The only thing that is slightly different is in arcade. What you can do is you can use the boomerangs to get yourself first place, and then once you have first place because of the boomerangs, you can switch to a British vehicle and it will give you the it'll give you that 1 out of 5. So that's just a little bit of a tidbit in the game where for some reason those are not labeled as British vehicles even though they're in the British tree, but you know how it is, they are technically Australian. I'm sure maybe one day we'll actually have an Australian either tech tree or an Australian decal that you can research for yourself. That's how I'm going to get, or how I did get all of the decals. Hopefully you can easily get them too. And if not, well, there'll always be the next 2 weeks afterwards. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, John Ryman, Joseph Anders, Martinez, Mopar 1969, Moxie, Super Cacti, Uyans Terry, and Eel of Goats, and of course Seductive Trash Can for supporting the channel.